the horse, the donkey, and the true spirit of Christmas. In the vast plains of Wyoming, where winter painted the landscape in shades of white and silver, stood a cozy ranch known as North Star. It was a place where time seemed to flow more slowly, especially during the Christmas season, when the magic of winter blended with the warmth of traditions. At the heart of this ranch were two animals that stood out: Wise, a grey horse whose eyes sparkled with wisdom accumulated over the years, and Star, a young donkey with silky fur and perfectly shaped ears. Although they lived in the same space, their perspectives on life couldn't have been more different. Wise, with his careful gait and gentle gaze, was adored by everyone on the ranch. His presence brought comfort to other animals, and even to the humans who cared for the property. He carried with him stories of past winters, glorious summers, and countless lessons learned throughout his life. Star, on the other hand, was the embodiment of youth and vanity. His shiny coat and proud posture made him stand out among the other animals. He spent hours admiring his reflection in any surface he could find, convinced that his outward beauty was his greatest virtue. As Christmas approached, the ranch came alive with festive decorations. Green garlands adorned the fences, twinkling lights decorated the barn, and the aroma of freshly baked cookies lingered in the cold winter air. It was a scene that could melt even the coldest of hearts. But for Star, it was merely another stage to showcase his beauty. One afternoon, as snowflakes danced softly in the air, Star strutted around the ranch yard. He stopped in front of a partially frozen bucket of water, admiring his reflection. "Look at me," he proclaimed to the other animals passing by, "how my ears perfectly match the Christmas decorations. I am undoubtedly the most beautiful animal on this ranch." Not far away, Wise watched the scene with a mix of concern and compassion. He knew that Star's vanity was creating a barrier between the young donkey and the true values that Christmas represented. Determined to help, Wise approached Star calmly. "Young friend," he said in his deep, soothing voice, "you seem very proud of your appearance." Star turned, surprised to be approached by the old horse. He looked Wise up and down, noticing his grey coat and less imposing stature. "Of course I'm proud," he replied dismissively. "Look at me and then look at you. It's obvious who is the most beautiful here." Star's cutting words would have hurt many, but Wise maintained his composure. His eyes, full of understanding, met Star's. "Beauty, my young friend, is more than what our eyes can see. Come with me. I want to show you something." Reluctant but intrigued by Wise's calm demeanor, Star agreed to follow him. Together, they headed toward the large red barn at the center of the ranch. As they approached, the sounds of animated voices and laughter reached their ears. Upon entering the barn, an unexpected scene unfolded before them. The other animals on the ranch, a tired-looking dairy cow, a pig with a limp, a rooster with missing feathers, and several others, were gathered around a makeshift nativity scene. The farmer's daughter, a little girl no more than 6 years old, sat in the middle of them, reading a Christmas story. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she gestured animatedly, and the animals seemed to absorb every word with genuine interest. Star observed the scene, confused. "What is this?" he asked Wise. "Why are these old and ugly animals so happy?" Wise smiled gently. "Look closely, Star. What do you really see?" As Star looked, he began to notice things he hadn't seen before. He saw how the cow, despite her fatigue, offered her warmth to the girl. He noticed how the pig, even with his limp, had brought a soft blanket for the child to sit on. And the rooster, with his missing feathers, sang softly, adding a comforting melody to the story. "See," Wise continued, "these animals, whom you judged by their appearance, are sharing something far more valuable than outward beauty. They are offering love, compassion, and joy. Isn't that the true spirit of Christmas?" Wise's words struck Star like a bolt of lightning. For the first time, he began to question his own priorities and values. The scene before him was a living testament that true beauty came from within, from kind actions and loving hearts. As the snow fell gently outside, inside the barn, a silent transformation began in the heart of a young donkey, a change that promised to bring new meaning not just to Christmas, but to his entire life. The North Star Ranch was not just a place of work, but a microcosm of life and learning. Situated in the vast plains of Wyoming, the ranch was known for its hospitality and exceptional care for the animals. The Thompson family, who had owned the ranch for generations, had a special connection with each creature that inhabited the property. The old red barn, the beating heart of the ranch, was more than just a shelter. Its weathered wooden walls held stories of harsh winters and scorching summers, of births and farewells, of challenges overcome and dreams realized. For the animals, it was a sanctuary where differences dissolved and community thrived. Wise, the gray horse, was a living legend on the ranch. Born right there, he had witnessed decades of change. In his youth, Sage had been a rodeo champion, carrying the name of the North Star Ranch beyond the borders of Wyoming. Now, in his advanced age, his physical strength had diminished, but his wisdom and compassion had only grown. Sage's deep brown eyes reflected the experiences of a long and rich life. He bore scars that told stories of courage, like the time he faced a fire to save a group of frightened foals. However, it was his everyday acts of kindness that truly defined his character. Sage had a gift for finding the best in every animal, even in those others deemed hopeless. Star, the young donkey, was the newest resident of the ranch. Raised on a show farm, he had been purchased by the Thompsons as a Christmas gift for their little daughter, Emily. His light brown coat shone in the sun, and his long, expressive ears were admired by all. Yet, Star's outward beauty hid a deep insecurity. Growing up in an environment where he was constantly judged for his appearance, he learned to use his looks as armor. His arrogant behavior and obsession with his image were, in fact, defense mechanisms to mask his fear of not being accepted for who he truly was. Emily, the 7-year-old daughter of the Thompsons, was the bridge between the human world and that of the animals on the ranch. With her red hair and freckles on her nose, she had a heart as big as the plains surrounding her home. Emily spent hours in the barn, talking to the animals as if they were her best friends. She saw beauty in every creature, regardless of their appearance or age. As winter deepened, the Christmas traditions of the North Star Ranch came to life. The Thompsons organized an annual celebration that brought together not only the ranch workers, but also families from the neighborhood. The big red barn was transformed into a festive hall, decorated with pine garlands, twinkling lights, and a massive pine tree at the center. A particularly special tradition was the Christmas story night, where everyone gathered in the barn to share tales and legends. It was a magical moment where the barriers between humans and animals seemed to dissolve, and everyone united through the power of words and imagination. For Star, these traditions were new and somewhat unsettling. Accustomed to being the center of attention, he found himself in a world where his outward beauty was not the most important factor. He watched with a mix of fascination and confusion as the other animals actively participated in the festivities, each in their own way. The gentle-eyed dairy cow offered warm milk to the children. The limping pig helped push sleds through the snow for the little ones' enjoyment. And the rooster, even with missing feathers, sang Christmas melodies that filled the air with joy. Meanwhile, Sage played a special role during the festivities. He became the silent guardian of the Christmas spirit, watching everything with his wise eyes and gently intervening whenever he saw an opportunity to teach a valuable lesson. As Christmas approached, the contrast between Star's attitude and the spirit of unity and generosity that permeated the ranch became increasingly evident. The young donkey was about to embark on a journey of self-discovery that would change not only his perception of Christmas, but also his understanding of what it truly means to be beautiful. As Christmas Eve drew near, the tension at the North Star Ranch began to rise, especially due to Star's behavior. The young donkey, still trapped in his vanity, continued to belittle the other animals and distance himself from the holiday activities. One particularly cold morning, Emily entered the barn carrying a box full of homemade Christmas decorations. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she explained to the animals that she wanted to decorate the barn for the Christmas party. "Look what I made!" Emily exclaimed, showing off a golden star made of straw. "I'm going to put it on top of our Christmas tree." The animals gathered around her, curious and excited. The dairy cow mooed softly in approval, the pig grunted happily, and even the rooster chirped a festive tune. Everyone except Star, who remained in his corner, looking at the scene with disdain. Noticing Star's isolation, Emily approached him with a warm smile. "Hey Star, do you want to help me hang these decorations? I'm sure with your long ears, you could reach the highest spots." Star huffed, turning his back on the little girl. "No thanks. I don't want to get dirty with this cheap straw. Besides, these decorations are too simple for someone as elegant as I am." Emily's smile faltered, and the other animals exchanged worried glances. Sage, who had been watching closely, decided it was time to intervene. "Young Star," he said gently as he approached, "don't you realize that you are missing the chance to be part of something special?" Star rolled his eyes. "Special? What's special about covering ourselves in cheap glitter and pretending we're all friends? I'm special just by being me. I don't need decorations for that." Star's arrogant reply echoed through the barn, leaving an uncomfortable silence. With tears in her eyes, Emily ran out of the barn. The other animals cast looks of disappointment at Star before dispersing, leaving him alone with Sage. The old horse sighed deeply. "Star, you may have a shiny coat and perfect ears, but your attitude is overshadowing all that exterior beauty. Christmas isn't about appearances, it's about what's in our hearts." Star, still defensive, shot back, "And what do you know about beauty? Look at you, all old and worn out. No one admires you like they admire me." Estrella's harsh words struck Sabio, but the old horse maintained his composure. "You are mistaken, young friend. True admiration does not come from appearance, but from actions. Look around you and you will see that every animal here is admired and loved, not for its outer beauty, but for what it offers to others." At that moment, Mr. Thompson entered the barn, looking worried. "Emily is very upset," he said, looking directly at Estrella. "She told me what happened. Estrella, if you can't behave and be kind to others, maybe it would be better for you to stay in the stable during the Christmas party." The threat of being excluded from the Christmas celebration finally broke through Estrella's armor of arrogance. For the first time, he felt a tightness in his chest, a sense that perhaps he had gone too far. Sabio, seeing the confusion in Estrella's eyes, seized the moment to plant a seed of change. "Estrella, you still have time to do the right thing. Think about how happy Emily would be if you joined us in decorating the barn. It's not about the decorations, it's about the act of sharing and creating something together." Estrella fell silent, his pride wrestling with a growing feeling of regret. He watched as Mr. Thompson left the barn, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the comforting presence of Sabio. Estrella's internal conflict was reaching its critical point. On one hand, he wanted to maintain his image of superiority, fearing that any show of humility might diminish his beauty in the eyes of others. On the other hand, Sabio's words and Emily's sadness had touched something deep within him, awakening a latent desire for true connection and acceptance. As the snow fell gently outside, Estrella found himself at a crossroads. His decision would not only affect his participation in the Christmas party, but could also fundamentally change his relationship with everyone on the ranch. Sabio, sensing Estrella's inner turmoil, decided to give the young donkey space to reflect. "Think carefully, Estrella," he said softly before stepping away. "Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is a chance for ourselves to change." With those words, Sabio left Estrella alone in the barn, surrounded by abandoned Christmas decorations and the echo of his own conscience. As Estrella struggled with his internal dilemma in the adjacent stable, the dairy cow, known as Donna Marta, faced her own challenge. With her advancing age, her milk production had decreased significantly. She feared that she wouldn't be able to contribute enough milk for the Thompson family's traditional Christmas pudding. Determined not to disappoint, Marta woke up earlier every day, striving to increase her output. Pedro, the lame pig, noticed her excessive effort. "Marta," he gently grunted one morning, "you don't need to work so hard. Your presence is already a gift." Marta shook her head, stubborn. "No, Pedro, I want to do my part. It's the only way to show my gratitude for all these years of care." Pedro the pig understood the sentiment. He too struggled with feelings of uselessness due to his lame leg. Together, they formed an unlikely partnership, supporting each other in their efforts to contribute to the festivities. Meanwhile, in the henhouse, the rooster Gregorio practiced tirelessly for his Christmas song. His missing feathers made him feel insecure, but he was determined to deliver the most beautiful serenade on Christmas Eve. The hens, touched by his dedication, began to join him in rehearsals, forming an improvised choir that echoed across the ranch. Emily, still hurt by Estrella's words, found unexpected solace among these animals. She spent hours in the stable, gently massaging Donna Marta's udders to relieve her discomfort, helping Pedro exercise and enthusiastically applauding Gregorio and his choir's rehearsals. The girl, in her innocence, did not see the animals' limitations. She only saw their generous hearts. Her constant presence and unconditional love began to heal not only her own hurt, but also the insecurities of the animals. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson watched these interactions with a mix of pride and concern. They spoke quietly each night about Estrella's behavior and how it affected their daughter. "Maybe we should return him after Christmas," Mr. Thompson suggested one night. "He seems not to fit in here." Mrs. Thompson hesitated. "Let's give him one more chance. I feel there is goodness in him, just hidden beneath layers of fear and insecurity." Meanwhile, Sabio continued his role as a silent mentor. He observed the interactions between the animals and Emily, seeing in them valuable lessons that could help Estrella. Discreetly, he began to guide the young donkey to witness these moments of kindness and cooperation. One afternoon, Estrella saw Emily helping Pedro walk in the snow, laughing joyfully as the pig slid comically. On another occasion, he watched the improvised choir rehearsing, noticing how their imperfect voices came together in a surprisingly beautiful harmony. These moments began to awaken something in Estrella. Slowly, he started to question his own actions and realized that there was more to life on the ranch than just appearances. The pressure of time was mounting as Christmas approached. The Thompsons were planning a grand celebration on Christmas Eve, and everyone on the ranch was involved in the preparations. Estrella's absence from these activities was becoming increasingly noticeable. One night, while everyone was asleep, Estrella stealthily left the stable. He walked to the main barn, where Emily's decorations were still scattered, forgotten since the incident. Carefully, he began to gather them, a spark of determination shining in his eyes. As the morning of Christmas Eve dawned, a surprise awaited everyone at the ranch. The barn was decorated not perfectly, but with evident and touching effort. In the center, hung a bit crooked, was the golden straw star that Emily had made. The transformation of the barn symbolized the beginning of change for Estrella, but his path to redemption still had challenges ahead. The wounds caused by his words would not heal overnight, and he still needed to learn the true essence of the Christmas spirit. On the morning before Christmas Eve, a silent anticipation enveloped the North Star Ranch. Snow fell gently, covering everything with a white and pure blanket. as if nature were offering a new beginning. Emily was the first to discover the barn's transformation. Her eyes widened in surprise and joy as she saw the ornaments hanging and her straw star shining in the center. She ran back to the house, calling for her parents and all the animals. Soon, a small crowd gathered in the barn, marveling at the unexpected decorations. All eyes turned to Estrella, who stood nervously at the entrance, his long ears drooping in a mix of shame and hope. "Did you do this, Estrella?" Emily asked, her voice soft and full of emotion. Estrella nodded timidly, unable to find the right words. The silence that followed was broken by Mr. Thompson. "Well, it seems someone has understood the true meaning of Christmas," he said with a warm smile. The tension in the air began to dissipate, and the other animals approached Estrella, offering words of appreciation and encouragement. Even Donna Marta, Pedro, and Gregorio, who had been most affected by Estrella's previous behavior, showed forgiveness and acceptance. In that moment, something changed within Estrella. The feeling of belonging and acceptance he experienced was different from anything he had felt before. It wasn't based on his appearance or superficial praise, but on something much deeper and more meaningful. While everyone admired the decorations, Sabio quietly approached Estrella. "You took the first step," he said softly, "but the journey is just beginning." Before Estrella could respond, a shrill sound cut through the air. It was the emergency bell of the ranch, used only in critical situations. Mr. Thompson rushed outside, closely followed by his wife and Emily. "It's old Joe," shouted Mr. Thompson, referring to the elderly neighbor who lived alone on the adjacent property. "His house is on fire." The news hit like a bombshell, overshadowing the earlier joy. Everyone knew that old Joe was practically part of the Thompson family and that he had no one else in the world. "Dad, we have to help him!" exclaimed Emily, tears in her eyes. Mr. Thompson was already organizing a rescue team, but the path to Joe's house was difficult, a steep trail covered in snow and ice. It was at that moment that Estrella stepped forward. "I can go," he said, his voice firm for the first time. "My legs are strong and steady in the snow. I can get there faster than anyone." Everyone looked at Estrella in surprise. This was a side of him that no one had seen before. Brave, selfless, willing to risk himself for others. "But it's dangerous," warned Mrs. Thompson. "You could get hurt." Estrella shook his head. "It doesn't matter. Old Joe needs help, and I can provide it. That's what matters, right?" Sabio watched with pride as Estrella prepared for the rescue mission. "Remember," he told the young donkey, "true courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it." With a determined nod, Estrella set off, galloping through the deep snow towards Joe's house. The biting wind whipped against his face, and the smoke on the horizon grew thicker by the second. But he did not hesitate. Upon reaching the burning house, Estrella found old Joe collapsed on the porch, choking on smoke. Without a second thought, he knelt beside the elderly man, allowing Joe to lean on his back. The journey back was arduous. The extra weight of Joe and the treacherous terrain tested Estrella's strength and determination to the limit. But with every difficult step, he remembered the lessons he had learned in recent days about courage, compassion, and the true meaning of being valuable. When they finally emerged from the forest, exhausted and covered in soot, they were greeted with cries of joy and relief. Emily ran to hug Estrella, not caring about the dirt on his once immaculate coat. "You are a hero, Estrella!" she exclaimed, tears of happiness in her eyes. But for Estrella, the greatest reward was not the praise or the admiration in everyone's eyes. It was the warm feeling in his chest, the certainty that he had done the right thing, not for glory or recognition, but simply because it was the right thing to do. In that moment, as snowflakes danced around them and the warmth of Emily's embrace enveloped him, Estrella finally understood what Sabio had been trying to teach him. True beauty, true worth, came from within, and nothing could be more beautiful than a heart filled with love and courage. Estrella's heroic rescue completely transformed the dynamics at North Star Ranch. In the days that followed, the young donkey experienced a radical change in how he was seen and treated by others, as well as in his own perception of himself. The news of Estrella's courageous act spread quickly through the community. Neighbors, who barely noticed the donkey before, now stopped to greet him and offer words of admiration. The children in the area asked to ride on his back, seeing him not just as a beautiful animal, but as a true hero. Emily, in particular, never left Estrella's side. She gently brushed his coat with extra care, removing the last traces of soot, and talked to him for hours, sharing her dreams and fears as if he were her closest confidant. "You know, Estrella," she said one afternoon while they watched the sunset, "I always thought you were beautiful on the outside, but now I see that you're even more beautiful on the inside." These words touched Estrella deeply, making him realize how much he had changed and grown in such a short time. Old Joe, recovering at the Thompsons' home, insisted on seeing Estrella every day. "This donkey saved my life," he told anyone who would listen. "He has more courage in one ear than many men have in their entire bodies." But not all the consequences of Estrella's heroic act were immediately positive. His body, unaccustomed to such exertion, ached constantly in the days following the rescue. He limped slightly, a physical reminder of the sacrifice he had made. Additionally, Estrella now faced a new kind of pressure. Everyone on the ranch seemed to expect him to always be brave and selfless, as if his heroic act had completely erased his past of vanity and selfishness. One afternoon, while resting in the stable, Estrella overheard a conversation between Dona Marta and Pedro. "He has changed so much," murmured Dona Marta. "It's like he's a completely different animal." Pedro nodded. "Yes, but will this change last? Or will he go back to being the arrogant Estrella we used to know?" These doubts echoed Estrella's own insecurities. He wondered if he would be able to live up to the new expectations everyone had for him. It was Sabio who, once again, offered the perspective Estrella needed. The old horse approached the donkey one night, finding him deep in thought and solitude. "I see that fame has its price," Sabio commented gently. Estrella sighed. "I don't know if I can be the hero everyone expects me to be all the time." Sabio smiled kindly. "And who said you have to be? True heroism, Estrella, isn't about being perfect all the time, but about doing the best you can every day. Sometimes that means grand acts like rescuing someone from a fire. Other times it simply means being kind to those around you." Sabio's words brought a new understanding to Estrella. He realized that his journey of growth hadn't ended with old Joe's rescue. In fact, it was just beginning. In the following days, Estrella worked hard to find a balance. He continued to help wherever he could, carrying heavy loads to ease Dona Marta's work, offering support to Pedro during his walks, and even joining Gregorio's choir, despite not having the most melodious voice. But Estrella also learned to accept help when he needed it. He allowed Emily to take care of his sore hooves and no longer hid his own insecurities and fears. As Christmas approached, a new atmosphere lingered over the Estrella do Norte ranch. It wasn't just the usual excitement of the season, but a deeper feeling of community and connection. And at the center of it all was Estrella, no longer isolated by his vanity, but deeply integrated into the life of the ranch. He had learned that true beauty and value came not from perfection, but from kindness, courage, and the willingness to grow and change. With the approach of Christmas, Estrella faced new challenges that tested his newly discovered courage and compassion. The ranch was busier than ever, preparing for the big holiday celebration and the arrival of distant relatives of the Thompsons. One cold morning, a truck arrived, bringing a new animal to the ranch, a young colt named Relampago. Unlike Estrella, Relampago didn't have an extraordinary appearance. His coat was a plain brown, and one of his front legs was slightly crooked, the result of an accident at birth. Estrella watched with interest as Mr. Thompson guided Relampago into the stable. The young colt seemed nervous and scared, his eyes wide with fear at the new environment. Emily, always compassionate, approached Relampago carefully. "Hello, little buddy," she said softly. "Welcome to our ranch. This is Estrella. He'll help you feel at home." Estrella felt a wave of anxiety. He was still getting used to his new role on the ranch and wasn't sure if he was ready to be a mentor to another animal. However, seeing the hopeful look in Emily's eyes and the fear in Relampago's, he knew he had to try. "Hello, Relampago," Estrella said, moving closer calmly. "Don't worry, you'll like it here. Everyone is very kind." "Do." In the following days, Estrella took on the responsibility of helping Relampago adapt. He showed the young colt the best spots to graze, introduced him to the other animals, and comforted him during the cold, lonely nights. However, Estrella soon realized that Relampago faced challenges similar to those he had once encountered. The young colt was extremely insecure about his appearance and his crooked leg, often hiding from the other animals and ranch visitors. "Why did they bring me here?" Relampago asked one night, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm not as beautiful as you, Estrella. I'm not as strong as the other horses. What's my purpose here?" Those words hit Estrella deeply, echoing his own thoughts from not long ago. He realized that this was a crucial moment, not just for Lightning, but for his own growth. "Lightning," Star began, choosing his words carefully. "Let me tell you a story. Not long ago, I was just like you. I thought my worth was only in my appearance. I bragged about my beauty and looked down on others. But you know what? I was never as unhappy as I was back then." Lightning looked at Star in surprise. "But you're a hero. Everyone admires you." Star shook his head with a gentle smile. "They admire me now not for my looks, but for what I've learned to be on the inside. And you know who taught me that? It was the animals I used to belittle. Mrs. Marta, with her tireless kindness. Pedro, with his determination despite challenges. Gregorio, with his contagious joy." As he spoke, Star felt a new understanding forming within him. He wasn't just repeating lessons learned, he was truly grasping their deeper meaning for the first time. "Lightning," he continued, "your crooked hoof doesn't make you any less valuable. In fact, it can be your greatest strength. It has taught you empathy, perseverance, and courage since the very first day of your life. Those are the qualities that truly matter." In the days that followed, Star worked tirelessly with Lightning. Together they practiced walking to strengthen the young colt's hoof. Star encouraged Lightning to join in the ranch activities, showing him how his unique perspective could be valuable. One day, during the preparations for Christmas, Emily had the idea to organize a small parade with the ranch animals. Lightning, still insecure, hesitated to participate. "What if I trip? What if everyone laughs at me?" he asked anxiously. Star looked into the young colt's eyes. "Even if you trip, we'll be here to support you, and if anyone laughs, it will be in joy for seeing your courage." With Star's encouragement, Lightning decided to join in. To everyone's surprise, his unique gait, a result of his crooked hoof, created a special rhythm that made the parade even more enchanting. The children cheered, the adults smiled, and Lightning glowed with a newfound confidence. In that moment, Star felt a wave of pride, not for himself, but for Lightning's growth. Watching the scene, Wise approached Star. "You've learned well, young friend," he said softly. "Teaching is often the best way to truly understand a lesson." Star nodded, feeling truly at peace with himself for the first time. He had not only overcome his own insecurities, but had helped another do the same. In that, he discovered a deeper joy than any superficial admiration could provide. Christmas Eve finally arrived at Star North Ranch, bringing with it an atmosphere of anticipation and joy. The cold air was infused with the scent of pine and cinnamon, and the freshly fallen snow covered the ground like a bright white blanket. The Thompsons were busy with the final preparations for the grand Christmas celebration. This year, the party would be special. not only to celebrate Christmas, but also to honor Star's heroic act and the recovery of old Joe. In the stable, the animals were also preparing in their own way. Mrs. Marta, determined to contribute, had managed to produce enough milk for the traditional Christmas pudding. Pedro the pig, with Lightning's help, had decorated the barn with garlands made from straw and colorful ribbons. Gregorio and his choir of hens were tirelessly practicing their Christmas carols. Star, for his part, felt a mix of emotions. He was happy to see how everyone was working together, but also nervous about the attention he knew he would receive during the party. He feared that he might somehow disappoint everyone. While he helped organize the hay for the guests to sit on, Star noticed Lightning watching the preparations with an anxious look. "What's wrong, friend?" Star asked, approaching the young colt. Lightning sighed. "It's just that, well, everyone has something special to contribute to the party. Mrs. Marta has her milk, Pedro decorated the barn, Gregorio has his choir. Even you are the hero everyone wants to celebrate. I don't have anything to offer." Lightning's words touched Star deeply. He recognized in them the echo of his own past insecurities. "Lightning," Star began, "you've already offered something very special. Your friendship and your courage in facing your fears have inspired all of us. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is simply to be ourselves." At that moment, Emily entered the barn, carrying a mysterious box. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Star, Lightning, I have a surprise for you," she exclaimed. Opening the box, she revealed 2 small golden bells, each tied with a red ribbon. "These are for you to wear at the party. Their sounds will announce the start of the celebrations." As Emily carefully tied the bells around Star's and Lightning's necks, Wise approached, watching the scene with a serene smile. "Remember," the old horse said, "the sound of these bells is not just for others. It's a reminder for yourselves, a reminder of how much you've grown, of how much you've overcome." As the afternoon progressed, the guests began to arrive. Families from neighboring farms, friends from the nearby town, all came to share in the joy of Christmas at Star North Ranch. Old Joe, now recovered, was the guest of honor. He walked back and forth, telling the story of his rescue to anyone who would listen, always emphasizing Star's courage. As dusk approached, a pleasant tension hung in the air. Everyone knew that the moment of the grand celebration was drawing near. The Thompsons gathered everyone in the decorated barn, where a large Christmas tree sparkled with colorful lights. Star and Lightning positioned themselves at the entrance of the barn, ready for their big moment. Mr. Thompson signaled, and Emily stepped forward, her eyes shining with emotion. "It's time," she whispered, gently stroking both of them. "Are you ready?" Star looked at Lightning, seeing in him no longer the insecure colt, but a brave and valuable friend. Together, they nodded. As they prepared to enter the barn, announcing the start of the festivities with the jingling of their bells, Star felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. He realized that this celebration was not just about his heroic act, but about the journey they had all shared, a journey of growth, acceptance, and true love. With one last encouraging glance at Lightning, Star took the first step toward the illuminated barn, ready to face whatever destiny had in store for them on this magical Christmas night. The melodious sound of Star and Lightning's bells echoed through the barn, silencing the lively conversations and drawing all eyes to the entrance. The two friends entered side by side, their steps synchronized and their heads held high with a mix of pride and humility. The crowd parted to make way, forming a corridor that led to the center of the barn, where the grand Christmas tree shone brightly. Emily, her eyes misty with emotion, walked between Star and Lightning, her hands gently resting on their necks. When they reached the center, Mr. Thompson stepped forward, his deep voice filling the space. "Friends and neighbors," he began, "we are here tonight not only to celebrate Christmas, but to honor the true spirit of this season, the spirit of courage, compassion, and transformation. And no one embodies that spirit better than our Star. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, and Star felt the weight of all the gazes upon him. For a moment, his old instinct to strut threatened to surface, but then he felt lightning tremble slightly beside him. In that instant, Star understood that this was not an occasion for vanity, but for gratitude and humility. Mr. Thompson continued, "But Star's story isn't just about a heroic act. It's about a journey of self-discovery and growth, a journey that all of us, in our own way, are on." At that moment, to everyone's surprise, old Joe stood up. His voice, though weak, carried palpable emotion. "If I may," he said, "I would like to say a few words." Joe slowly walked up to Star, his eyes meeting those of the donkey. "Star," he began, "you didn't just save my life that night. You taught me a lesson I took a lifetime to learn, that the true worth of someone isn't found in what others see on the outside, but in what lies within the heart." Joe's words deeply touched everyone present. Many discreetly wiped away tears, and even the animals seemed moved. It was then that something unexpected happened. Lightning, inspired by Star's courage and Joe's words, stepped forward. His normally timid voice rang clear and strong. "If Star has taught us anything," he said, surprising everyone with his eloquence, "it's that each of us has a special gift to offer. It may not be the gift we expected or that others expect from us, but it is unique and valuable." A respectful silence fell over the barn as Lightning continued. "I came here thinking my crooked leg was a curse, something that made me less valuable. But Star showed me that our differences can be our greatest strength, that it is through our imperfections that we learn compassion, courage, and true love." As Lightning spoke, something extraordinary began to happen. The other animals on the ranch, Mrs. Marta, Pedro, Gregorio, and his choir, moved closer, forming a circle around Star and Lightning. It was as if, in that moment, all barriers between species, between animals and humans, had dissolved. Star, deeply touched by Lightning's words and the display of unity, felt it was his turn to speak. His normally confident voice was filled with emotion. "Friends," he began, "when I arrived at this ranch, I believed that my outer beauty was all I had to offer. I was so wrong. Each of you, Mrs. Marta with her kindness, Pedro with his perseverance, Gregorio with his joy, and Lightning with his courage, has taught me what truly matters." Star paused, looking into each face in the crowd before continuing. "The true spirit of Christmas isn't found in the gifts we give or receive. It's in the way we treat each other every day. It's in the kindness we offer without expecting anything in return. It's in the courage to be vulnerable and in the strength we find when we come together." As Star spoke, something magical seemed to happen in the barn. The lights on the Christmas tree appeared to shine even brighter, and a sense of warmth and love filled the space, touching every heart present. Emily, with tears in her eyes, embraced Star and Lightning. "You two," she whispered, "are the best Christmas gifts I could have asked for." "Aye." In that moment, with the gentle sound of the bells still echoing in the air, everyone at North Star Ranch, both humans and animals alike, felt they were experiencing the true miracle of Christmas. Not a miracle of material gifts or supernatural events, but the miracle of love, acceptance, and transformation that occurs when we open our hearts to one another. In the days that followed the Christmas celebration, a new atmosphere lingered over North Star Ranch. The magic of that special night had not dissipated with the dawn. On the contrary, it seemed to have deeply rooted itself in every corner of the property and in the hearts of all its inhabitants. Estrella, once so concerned about his outward appearance, now walked through the ranch with a new aura of serenity. His coat still shimmered in the sunlight, but it was the sparkle in his eyes that truly captured everyone's attention. He spent his days helping wherever he could, whether it was carrying heavy loads to lighten Donna Marta's burden or offering words of encouragement to the younger animals. Relámpago, inspired by Estrella's transformation, had become a constant and positive presence on the ranch. His crooked hoof, once a source of shame, was now seen as a symbol of resilience. The children loved to ride him, discovering that his unique gait provided a smooth and comforting ride. The other animals had also been deeply affected by the events of Christmas. Donna Marta, Pedro, and Gregorio formed an inseparable group, each contributing their unique gifts to the well-being of the ranch. Gregorio's chorus, now including unlikely voices like Estrella's melodious bray and Relámpago's gentle whinny, became a regular feature of the nights at the ranch. Emily, a silent witness to all this transformation, blossomed with the love and wisdom that surrounded her. She spent hours in the barn, not only caring for the animals, but also learning valuable life lessons from each one of them. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson watched with pride as their ranch became more than just a business. It was now a true home, a place of growth, learning, and unconditional love. Old Joe, completely recovered, had become a frequent visitor. He enjoyed sitting near the barn, telling stories to the animals and children, always emphasizing the importance of courage and kindness. As winter gave way to spring, and spring to summer, the spirit of that Christmas continued to thrive at Estrella do Norte Ranch. The lessons learned about acceptance, courage, and the value of true inner beauty had become an integral part of daily life. Estrella, gazing at the sunset on a summer afternoon, reflected on his journey. He realized that his transformation had not merely been about letting go of vanity or performing a heroic act. It was about discovering that true happiness and fulfillment came from living with love, compassion, and authenticity. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in gold, Estrella felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the ranch that welcomed him, for the friends who taught him, and for the journey that led him to discover his true self. And there, under the twilight sky, with the distant sound of the ranch's bells, Estrella knew he had found something far more precious than the superficial admiration he once sought. He had found a place where he belonged, a purpose greater than himself, and a love that transcended all appearances. But hold on, for there's still more to be told. Let's start another story. The journey of the wise goose. Along the crystal-clear shores of the lakes in Minnesota, where autumn painted the trees in shades of gold and red, lived an old and wise goose named Gregorio. Known for his experience and compassion, Gregorio was the respected leader of a diverse group of migratory birds. His wisdom was legendary among the birds of the area, and many traveled from afar to seek his advice before the great annual journey south. On a crisp October morning, as the group prepared for the long trip, Gregorio attentively observed his companions. His experienced eyes caught something others had not noticed: a young duck named Plinio, who seemed anxious and insecure, set apart from the main group. Gregorio approached Plinio quietly, his grey feathers contrasting with the young duck's bright plumage. "What troubles you, young Plinio?" Gregorio asked in a calm and comforting voice. Plinio, surprised by the sudden presence of the esteemed leader, hesitated before responding. "Mr. Gregorio, this is my first migration. I'm afraid I won't be strong enough for the journey and will fall behind." The old goose nodded understandingly. He had seen that fear in the eyes of many young birds over the years. "My young friend," Gregorio began, "the strength of a flock is not in its fastest or strongest bird, but in how we fly together. Let me share with you the secret of our journey. Adirji." As Gregorio spoke with Plinio on the other side of the lake, a young and ambitious heron named Clara watched the scene with disdain. Clara was known for her speed and endurance, always eager to prove her worth. She didn't understand why Gregorio wasted time with the weaker ones when they should focus on departing as quickly as possible. In the days that followed, as the group prepared to leave, Gregorio took Plinio under his wing, quite literally. He taught the young duck the principles of flying in a V formation, explaining how each bird, by flapping its wings, creates a vortex of air that helps the bird behind it. "Look, Plinio," Gregorio said during a practical demonstration, "in nature, just as in life, we achieve more when we support each other. True leadership is not about being at the front, but ensuring that no one is left behind." Clara, who was nearby, couldn't help but overhear. She huffed, thinking to herself that these ideas would only slow the group down. In her opinion, the strong should lead, and the weak should strive to keep up or fall behind. As the day of departure approached, tension within the group increased. Some, inspired by Gregorio's example, began to help the younger and less experienced birds. Others, influenced by Clara's attitude, argued that they should focus solely on their own preparation. On the eve of their departure, Gregorio gathered the entire flock. The sun was setting over the lake, casting a golden glow over the calm waters. The birds assembled in a semicircle, their feathers rustling softly in the evening breeze. "My friends," Gregorio began, his voice carrying the weight of experience, "tomorrow we embark on our great journey. Each of you has your own strengths and weaknesses. Some are fast, others are resilient. Some know the way, while others face it for the first time. But remember, it is not the strongest bird that guarantees our success, but how we fly together." His words resonated throughout the group, touching many hearts. Plinio, in particular, felt a wave of courage and determination. Clara, on the other hand, rolled her eyes, impatient to begin. Gregorio continued, "Our journey will be long and challenging. We will face strong winds, relentless storms, and dangerous predators. But if we maintain our formation and look out for one another, we will reach our destination not only faster, but stronger and united." As the stars began to dot the night sky, Gregorio concluded, "Rest well tonight. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, we will take flight together. Remember, every flap of a wing counts. Each of you is essential to our journey." With those words, the group dispersed to rest. Plinio, with his heart filled with hope, knew he would not face the journey alone. Clara, still skeptical, silently plotted how she could prove her worth during the trip. That night, as the moon danced over the waters of the lake, a silent promise lingered in the air. The promise of a journey that would test not only each bird's physical strength, but also the strength of their character and the depth of their compassion. Dawn brought a chilly breeze and the sound of hundreds of wings flapping. The usually tranquil Minnesota lake was alive with activity as the birds prepared for departure. The morning mist slowly lifted, revealing the autumn scenery in all its glory. Gregorio stood at the lake's edge, his gray feathers shimmering with golden tones under the rising sun. His watchful eyes observed the flock, noting every detail. Beside him, Plinio fidgeted nervously, his feathers still damp from the morning dip. "Take a deep breath, young friend," Gregorio advised. "Remember what we practiced. Stay in formation and trust your companions." Not far away, Clara stretched, her long heron legs tense and ready for flight. She cast a challenging glance in Gregorio's direction, determined to prove her worth during the journey. The flock was a colorful mix of species: geese, ducks, herons, and even a few pelicans who had joined the group. Each bird brought with it unique stories and experiences, making the flock a microcosm of the wildlife diversity in Minnesota. Among them was Hector, an old pelican with scars from past battles. His white feathers contrasted with the orange beak, and his eyes carried the wisdom of many migrations. Hector and Gregorio were old friends, having faced countless journeys together. "Are you ready for another adventure, my friend?" Hector asked, approaching Gregorio. The old goose smiled. "I'm always ready, Hector. Though I must admit each year seems to bring new challenges." Hector nodded, his gaze wandering over the group. "The young ones seem more restless this year, especially that heron over there." Gregorio followed Hector's gaze to Clara. "Ah, yes, Clara." She has much to learn about the true meaning of strength and leadership. In the meantime, Plinio had joined a small group of young ducks. Among them was Lua, a brown duckling with distinctive white spots. Lua was known for her insatiable curiosity and adventurous spirit. "I'm so excited," Lua exclaimed, her wings fluttering with enthusiasm. "Just imagine all the new things we'll see." Plinio smiled nervously. "I just hope I can keep up." Lua gave Plinio a friendly nudge. "Don't worry, we'll all be together. Besides, we have Gregorio guiding us." The sun continued to rise in the sky, painting the clouds with shades of pink and orange. The air was filled with the aroma of fallen leaves and the fresh water from the lake. It was a perfect day to start a journey. Gregorio looked up at the sky, reading the signs of the weather like only an experienced bird could. The wind was favorable, gently blowing from the north. There were no signs of storms on the horizon, at least not for now. "It's time," announced Gregorio, his voice carrying a mix of authority and kindness. The flock gathered, naturally forming the iconic V formation. Gregorio took the lead position, with Hector and other veterans close by. Clara positioned herself right behind, determined to prove her resilience. Plinio and Lua stayed further back, sheltered by the more experienced birds. Before they took off, Gregorio turned to the group one last time. "Remember, my friends, our strength lies in our unity. Take care of one another, maintain the formation, and together we will face any challenges that await us." With a powerful flap of his wings, Gregorio launched into the air. One by one, the others followed, their wings slicing through the morning air. The sound of hundreds of birds taking off echoed across the lake, a testament to the grandeur of nature and the power of community. As they gained altitude, Plinio felt a mix of fear and excitement. Beside him, Lua smiled, her eyes shining with the promise of adventure. Ahead, Clara struggled to keep pace, determined to impress. And so, under the blue sky of Minnesota, the flock began their great journey south, each beat of their wings bringing them closer to their destination and the lessons the path would teach them. 3 days passed since their departure from the lake in Minnesota. The flock flew over the vast plains of the American Midwest, the scenery below gradually changing from dense forests to endless agricultural fields. The rhythm of the journey had settled, but tensions began to arise. Clara, the ambitious young heron, continued to push the group to fly faster. She frequently moved ahead in the formation, breaking the rhythm established by Gregorio. "Why are we flying so slowly?" Clara shouted during a break. "We could cover so much more distance if we didn't always wait for the slower ones." Gregorio, who was helping some younger ducks recover, looked at Clara with a calm yet firm expression. "Clara, speed isn't always the key to a successful journey. We need to stay united." But Clara was unconvinced. The next morning, she convinced a small group of younger, stronger birds to fly ahead with her, promising them they would reach their destination faster. Plinio watched the scene with concern. "Gregorio, what will we do? They will get lost or too tired." The old goose sighed heavily. "Sometimes, Plinio, we need to learn from our own choices, but we won't abandon them." Meanwhile, the weather began to change. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the wind grew stronger. Hector, the experienced pelican, approached Gregorio. "A storm is approaching," he warned, "and it will be severe." Gregorio nodded gravely. "We need to find a safe place to land and wait it out, and we must reach Clara and the others before it's too late." The main flock changed course, flying lower in search of shelter. Plinio and Lua flew side by side, struggling against the increasingly strong gusts of wind. "I'm worried about Clara and the others," Lua shouted over the noise of the wind. "They don't know about the storm." Plinio felt a surge of courage within him. "We have to warn them." Without a second thought, Plinio broke away from the main formation, with Lua quickly following him. Gregorio saw the 2 young birds pull away, and recognizing their intent, didn't stop them. Instead, he quickly reorganized the group to follow their lead. Flying against the wind, Plinio and Lua finally spotted Clara and her small group. They were exhausted, struggling to maintain altitude against the increasingly strong gusts. "Clara!" Plinio shouted. "You all need to come back. A storm is coming." Clara, her pride wounded by exhaustion and her misjudgment, hesitated for a moment. But seeing the sky darkening rapidly behind them, she finally relented. "All right," she admitted, her voice nearly drowned out by the howling wind. "Show us the way back." At that moment, the first drops of rain began to fall. The wind intensified, making flight nearly impossible. Plinio and Lua led the group back, fighting against every gust. It was then that Gregorio emerged through the low clouds, leading the rest of the flock. "This way," he shouted. "I found a safe place to land." With the last of their strength, all the birds followed Gregorio to a small, sheltered valley where sturdy trees provided protection from the worst of the storm. Soaked and exhausted, they landed. Clara, trembling from cold and shame, approached Gregorio. I'm so sorry," she murmured. "You were right. I put everyone in danger." Gregorio looked at her with compassion. "The important thing is that we are all safe now, and that you learned a valuable lesson." As the group settled in to wait out the storm, Plinio found himself at the center of attention. Many praised his courage in flying to warn Clara and the others. "You acted like a true leader today, Plinio," Gregorio said with pride. "Leadership isn't about being the fastest or the strongest. It's about caring for others and doing what's right, even when it's hard." Plinio felt a mix of pride and humility. He looked at Lua, who was smiling at him, and at Clara, who seemed to be deeply reflecting on the day's events. As night fell and the storm raged outside, the flock huddled together, sharing warmth and stories. The journey was far from over, and more challenges certainly awaited them. But in that moment, united and safe, they understood a little more about the true meaning of strength, leadership, and community. The days that followed the storm brought new challenges and revelations for the flock. As they continued their journey south, the dynamics among the birds began to change subtly. Clara, humiliated by her earlier experience, became quieter and more observant. She started paying closer attention to Gregorio's teachings and the needs of the other flock members. Her transformation did not go unnoticed, especially by Plinio, who began to see a different side of the once arrogant heron. One morning, while the group rested by a small lake, Clara approached Plinio. "I wanted to thank you," she said softly, "for coming to warn us about the storm. I learned a lot from you and Gregorio." Plinio was surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "We're all learning together," he replied gently. Meanwhile, Lua had become friends with a young pelican named Pedro, the son of Hector. Pedro was known for his timid nature and fear of heights, quite unusual for a pelican. Lua, with her adventurous spirit, decided to help him overcome his fears. "Come on, Pedro," Lua encouraged during their flights. "Look how beautiful the world is from up there." Little by little, with Lua's patient assistance, Pedro began to gain confidence, flying higher and for longer periods. Hector watched his son's progress with a mix of pride and concern. One night, he shared his thoughts with Gregorio. "I'm grateful that Lua is helping Pedro," Hector said, "but I fear he may not be ready for the challenges that still lie ahead." Gregorio nodded in understanding. "Sometimes, our role is to let the young ones discover their own strength. Pedro may surprise us." As they traveled south, the group faced a series of obstacles. Hunting grounds where gunshots echoed in the air forced them to fly higher and change course. Almost invisible power lines that required careful maneuvers, and the constant threat of predators, especially at night. It was during one of those tense nights that the flock made a surprising discovery. While resting in a secluded marsh, Plinio heard a faint sound coming from the nearby reeds. Cautiously investigating, he found an injured and lonely hatchling heron. "Gregorio!" Plinio called, alarmed. "We need help here!" The flock quickly gathered. Clara, recognizing the hatchling species, stepped forward. I know how to care for him, she said, her voice filled with determination. But we'll need to stay here for a few days for him to recover. The decision to stay was not easy. Some argued they couldn't afford to delay their journey. Others feared that the presence of the injured hatchling might attract predators. Gregorio listened to all the opinions before speaking. This young one needs our help. If we abandon him, we abandon everything our journey together represents. We will stay and help him. Chidi! In the days that followed, the flock took turns caring for the hatchling and keeping watch. Clara spent hours teaching the young one how to feed and strengthening his wings. Plinio and Lua organized groups to gather food. Even Pedro, inspired by the injured hatchling's courage, volunteered to make reconnaissance flights, overcoming his fear of heights. The experience united the flock in a way no one expected. Barriers between species were broken and new friendships formed. When the time finally came to leave, the hatchling was strong enough to fly. With tears in her eyes, Clara said goodbye to him, knowing he would find his own flock soon. As they resumed their journey, there was a new sense of purpose and unity among them. They were no longer just a group of migrating birds. They were a family, united by shared experiences and mutual compassion. Gregorio looked back at the marsh disappearing on the horizon and smiled. The journey was far from over, but he knew that together they could face any challenge that came their way. The flock continued its journey south, now closer than ever. The lessons learned and the bonds forged had strengthened them, but fate still had challenges in store. As they moved forward, the weather began to change dramatically. The air grew colder, and biting winds blew in from the north. Gregorio, with his vast experience, recognized the signs. "A cold front is coming," he announced to the group during a break, "and earlier than usual for this time of year." Hector, the old pelican, nodded in concern. "That could mean winter will arrive ahead of schedule. We need to pick up the pace." The news caused a stir among the birds. They knew that an early arrival of winter could be catastrophic, potentially blocking migration routes and freezing essential water bodies. Clara, who had become more collaborative since her earlier misjudgment, suggested, "What if we split into smaller groups? The faster flyers could go ahead and prepare resting spots for the others." Gregorio considered the idea for a moment. "It's risky to separate, but it might be our best option. We need volunteers for the advance group." To everyone's surprise, Plinio stepped forward. "I will go," he said, his voice steady. Lua and Pedro also volunteered, along with Clara and a few others. Gregorio looked at the young duck with a mix of pride and concern. "Are you sure, Plinio? It will be a dangerous journey." Plinio nodded. "I've learned a lot from you, Gregorio. It's time to put those lessons into practice." With the plan established, the advance group prepared to leave. Gregorio gave his final instructions: "Stay united, be aware of dangers, and don't take unnecessary risks. We'll meet at the big lake near the southern border." As the advance group took off, led by Clara and Plinio, the rest of the flock watched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The journey of the advance group proved to be more challenging than anyone could have anticipated. They faced icy winds that seemed to cut through their feathers and hailstorms that forced them to seek shelter frequently. During one of these forced stops, sheltered in a small cave, Pedro began to tremble uncontrollably. "I don't know if I can go on," he murmured, his voice weak. Lua snuggled up next to him, offering warmth. "You're stronger than you think, Pedro. Remember how you overcame your fear of heights?" Clara, watching the scene unfold, felt a wave of compassion she had never experienced before. She joined the two, using her long wings to shield them from the wind. "Rest," she said gently. "I'll keep watch." As night fell, Clara reflected on how much she had changed since the beginning of the journey. She realized that true strength wasn't about being the fastest or the toughest, but in caring for others and working together. The next morning, when they resumed their flight, they encountered a shocking sight. The lake that was supposed to be their meeting point was completely frozen. "This shouldn't have happened so early," Plinio said, his voice trembling with worry. Clara landed on the frozen shore, her heart heavy. "If we don't find an alternative quickly, the rest of the flock will be in great danger." It was at that moment that Pedro, the timid pelican, surprised everyone. I think I know a place," he said hesitantly. "When I was younger, my father told me about a hidden valley protected by mountains. He said it was a secret refuge used by the ancients in times of great danger." Everyone looked at Pedro in astonishment. Lua smiled, proud of her friend. "Can you take us there?" Pedro took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I can try, but it's a dangerous journey through the mountains." Plinio looked at each member of the group. "It's our best hope, not just for us, but for the whole flock." With renewed determination, the group took off, following Pedro toward the imposing mountains on the horizon. They knew they were about to face their greatest challenge yet, but they also felt that something had changed within them. They were no longer just a diverse group of birds forced to fly together. They were a united team, each bringing their own strengths and overcoming their weaknesses together. As they flew toward the unknown, Plinio glanced back one last time, thinking of Gregorio and the rest of the flock. "Hang in there," he murmured to himself. "We're coming." The decision to follow Pedro in search of the secret valley brought with it a series of immediate challenges. The advance group was now flying through unknown and dangerous terrain, with steep mountains rising before them and treacherous winds pushing them in every direction. Clara, flying close to Pedro, noticed that the young pelican seemed more confident than ever. "How are you feeling, Pedro?" she asked. "Scared," Pedro admitted, "but also determined. I feel like I can finally make a difference." Meanwhile, Plinio led the formation, his eyes keenly searching for any signs of danger. Lua flew alongside him, her contagious energy keeping the group's spirits high, even in the toughest circumstances. As they moved deeper into the mountains, the weather worsened. Sudden snowstorms forced them to take frequent breaks, seeking shelter in small caves or under rocky overhangs. During one of these stops, Plinio expressed his concern. "What if we don't find the valley in time? The rest of the flock is counting on us." Clara, surprising everyone with her newfound attitude, replied, "We can't lose hope. Each of us has grown and changed during this journey. If we work together, I'm sure we will find a solution." Meanwhile, the main group led by Gregorio faced their own challenges. The old goose realized that the weather was worsening faster than expected, and the absence of news from the advance group worried him. Hector, flying alongside Gregorio, shared his concerns. "I hope Pedro is okay. He's always been so shy and insecure." Gregorio offered a reassuring smile. "Sometimes it's the challenges that reveal our true strength. I have faith in Pedro and the others." On the third day of their journey through the mountains, the advanced group faced their toughest test. A violent snowstorm caught them by surprise, separating them. Plinio and Lua found themselves isolated from the others, battling fierce winds. "Plinio!" Lua shouted over the howling wind. "I can't see the others." The young duck felt the weight of responsibility on his wings. He knew he had to make a crucial decision: continue searching for the others or seek immediate shelter. Remembering Gregorio's teachings about leadership and mutual care, Plinio made his choice. "We need to find shelter first," he yelled back. "Only then can we help the others." Guiding Lua, Plinio managed to find a small cave where they could take refuge. As they waited for the storm to pass, the two talked about everything they had learned and how they had changed since the beginning of the journey. "I never thought I could lead," Plinio confessed. "I always saw myself as the weak and fearful duck." Lua smiled, despite the cold. "You've always had that strength inside you, Plinio. This journey just helped you discover it." When the storm finally subsided, Plinio and Lua emerged from the cave, determined to find their companions. To their surprise and relief, they saw Clara, Pedro, and the others flying in circles not far away, searching for them. The reunion was emotional, with everyone expressing relief and gratitude for being safe. Pedro, in particular, seemed transformed by the experience. "I thought I had failed you all," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "But then I remembered what my dad always said. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it." Clara, placing a comforting wing around Pedro, said, "You guided us here, Pedro. Without you, we wouldn't have come this far." With the group reunited and revitalized, they resumed their search for the secret valley. Now, more than ever, they understood that their strength lay in their unity, in how each of them had grown and learned to trust one another. As they flew, Plinio couldn't help but think of Gregorio and the rest of the flock. He knew that no matter what happened next, they would face it together, like a true family. With renewed determination, the advanced group continued their journey through the rugged mountains. With each passing day, they faced new challenges that tested not only their physical endurance, but also their strength of character and unity. Pedro, once so insecure, now led the way with surprising confidence. His memories of his father's stories became clearer as he recognized natural landmarks. "Look," he exclaimed one day, pointing to a peculiar rock formation. "My dad called that the giant's thumb. We're on the right track." Plinio, flying alongside Pedro, felt a wave of pride for his friend. "You're doing an amazing job, Pedro. I never doubted you." Clara, who was observing their interaction, reflected on her own journey of growth. She remembered how, at the beginning, she viewed Plinio and Pedro as weak and slow. Now she saw them as examples of true strength and leadership. One afternoon, while resting on a rocky plateau, Clara approached Plinio. "You know," she began hesitantly, "I wanted to apologize. At the start of this journey, I didn't believe in you. I thought you were weak and that you would hold us back." Plinio looked at her, surprised by her honesty. Clara continued, "But you proved me completely wrong. Your courage, compassion, and leadership have brought us here. I've learned a lot from you, Plinio." The young duck felt touched by Clara's words. "We've all grown on this journey," he replied. "You've changed too, Clara. Your strength now comes from how you care for others, not from how fast you can fly." Meanwhile, Lua continued to be the cheerful spirit of the group, keeping morale high even in the toughest moments. Her friendship with Pedro blossomed, and together they often led the group in lively songs during their flights, helping to pass the time and keep everyone united. As they ventured deeper into the mountains, the terrain became increasingly challenging. Narrow cliffs forced them to fly in tighter formations, testing their flying skills. Sudden snowstorms forced them to seek shelter quickly, often in cold caves or under precarious rocky overhangs. It was during one of these storms that the group faced their greatest test yet. Trapped in a small cave, they found themselves stuck for 2 days as the blizzard raged outside. Their supplies were running low, and the intense cold threatened to freeze their feathers. In this critical moment, each member of the group found within themselves a strength they didn't know they possessed. Clara used her long heron legs to dig through the snow, searching for plants and small animals for everyone to eat. Pedro, overcoming his fear of tight spaces, explored deeper into the cave, discovering a source of unfrozen water. Plinio organized a rotation system so that everyone could stay warm, ensuring that no one was exposed to the cold for too long. Lua, with her tireless energy, kept everyone occupied with games and stories, preventing despair from settling in. She even put together a little play, with each bird playing a different role, bringing laughter and lightness to such a difficult situation. When the storm finally passed and they were able to leave the cave, something had changed. They were no longer just a group of birds trying to survive. They were a cohesive unit, each completely trusting the others. "Look at us," Plinio said, his voice filled with emotion as they watched the sunrise over the snow-covered mountains. "When we started this journey, we were so different, so separated. Now we are a family," Clara finished, her words echoing the sentiment of everyone. Pedro, gazing at the horizon, suddenly let out a shout of joy. "There! Look, the valley!" Everyone followed his gaze, and indeed, nestled between two imposing peaks, was a lush valley, sheltered from storms and the biting cold. With hearts full of hope and renewed determination, the group took flight toward the valley. They knew they still had to find a way to bring the rest of the flock to this refuge, but now, more than ever, they believed that together they could overcome any obstacle. As they flew, Plinio thought of Gregorio and how the wise goose would be proud to see how much they had all grown and transformed. This journey had revealed the best in each of them, proving that true strength comes not only from individual skill, but from unity and mutual care. The advance group landed on the shores of a crystal-clear lake at the heart of the secret valley. The contrast between the biting cold of the mountains and the mild climate of the valley was striking. Lush trees and green meadows surrounded them, providing a perfect refuge from the early winter. Plinio, naturally taking on the role of leader, gathered everyone for an urgent discussion. "We've found the valley, but our mission is far from over," he said, his voice steady. "We need to figure out how to bring the rest of the flock here safely." Clara nodded, her expression serious. "The problem is that the path we took is too dangerous for less experienced or weaker birds. Not to mention that Gregorio and the others are probably following the original route," added Lua. "They don't even know to look for this valley." Pedro, who had been quietly observing the valley, suddenly spoke up. "What if we could signal to them somehow? Something big enough to be seen from afar?" The idea sparked a wave of excitement in the group. Everyone began suggesting possibilities, from stacking stones to trying to reflect sunlight with the waters of the lake. As they discussed, Plinio noticed something interesting. "Look," he pointed to a column of steam rising from a distant part of the valley. "It looks like a hot spring. Maybe we can use that somehow." Clara, with her sharp eyesight, examined the area. "There are several of these springs scattered throughout the valley. If we could somehow amplify the steam, maybe we could create a visible signal even from great distances." From that moment, the group split into teams, each assigned a specific task. Plinio and Clara led a group to investigate the hot springs and find a way to amplify the steam. Lua and a few others were tasked with gathering materials that could be used to create a large visual marker on the ground of the valley. Pedro, with his growing knowledge of the area, led a reconnaissance team to map out the valley and find the best location for the signal. Days passed in frantic preparation. Each bird in the group contributed their unique skills. The herons used their long beaks to dig channels, redirecting water from the hot springs. The ducks, with their swimming expertise, helped test the temperature and flow of the water. The pelicans used their large bills to transport heavy materials. As they worked, Plinio couldn't shake off his worry about Gregorio and the rest of the flock. He knew that time was running out. Winter was advancing quickly, and each day that passed increased the danger for those still out there. One night, as the group rested after a long day of work, Clara approached Plinio. She could see the concern in his eyes. "We're doing everything we can, Plinio," she said softly. "Gregorio taught us well. I'm sure he's keeping the flock safe while they look for us." Plinio smiled gratefully. "You're right, Clara. It's just that I feel like the real test is yet to come. Everything we've been through so far feels like it's only been preparation." Lua, overhearing the conversation, joined them. "Well, if it's preparation, then we're more than ready," she said with her characteristic optimism. "Look at us. Just a few weeks ago, we were just a group of different birds trying to migrate. Now, we're a united team, capable of doing amazing things together." Pedro, who was nearby, added, "And no matter what happens next, we'll face it together, like a family." The words of his friends brought comfort to Plinio. He looked around, seeing all the birds working together, each contributing in their own way for the common good. They had come a long way since the beginning of their journey. With a determined sigh, Plinio stood up. "You're right. Tomorrow, we'll finish our preparations, and then we'll make the signal. It's time to bring our family home." As the group prepared for sleep, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. They knew they were on the brink of something significant, a moment that would test everything they had learned and become. The climax of their journey was near, and they were ready to face it together. Dawn brought with it a palpable sense of urgency. The advance group knew this would be the decisive day, the day they would attempt to signal Gregorio and the rest of the flock, guiding them to the safety of the secret valley. Plinio gathered everyone around the central lake. "Today is the day," he announced, his voice steady despite the anxiety he felt. "Each of you knows what you need to do. Remember, we work as one. Our strength lies in our unity." With a determined nod, the birds divided into their designated teams. Clara led a group to the hot springs, where they had spent days digging channels and preparing a system to amplify the steam. Lua coordinated another team to finish the enormous symbol on the valley floor, a V-shaped formation made of stones and branches, visible from above. Pedro, overcoming his fear of heights, flew with a small group to the highest point in the valley. From there, they would keep watch, ready to spot any sign of the approaching flock. As the sun rose in the sky, the tension increased. Plinio flew from group to group, checking on the preparations and offering words of encouragement. He knew everything depended on this moment. Suddenly, a cry echoed through the valley. It was Pedro, his voice filled with urgency and excitement. "They're coming! I spotted the flock!" Plinio's heart raced. It was time. "Now!" he shouted. Clara and her team sprang into action. Using techniques they had practiced tirelessly, they began directing more water to the hot springs. Steam began to rise in massive columns, creating a white curtain that soared above the surrounding mountains. At the same time, Lua and her group flew in formation over the giant symbol on the ground, their feathers reflecting the sunlight and drawing attention to the mark. Up high, Pedro and his watchers maintained visual contact with the approaching flock, guiding the efforts in the valley. But then the unexpected happened. A cold gust of wind swept down from the mountains, dissipating part of the steam and threatening the entire plan. Plinio, seeing the danger, made a bold decision. "Clara," he called, "we need to fly through the steam. Our wings can help direct it." Without hesitation, Clara nodded. Together they dove into the column of hot steam, flapping their wings furiously to keep the signal visible. Others joined them, forming an impressive aerial dance of birds and steam. On the horizon, Gregorio led the exhausted flock. They had faced storms, predators, and intense cold. Many were on the brink of their strength. Then the old goose spotted something unusual, a column of steam rising between the mountains, with shapes of birds dancing within. "Look!" he exclaimed. "There!" The flock changed direction, following the intriguing sight. As they approached, they saw the enormous symbol on the valley floor and finally recognized the birds flying in the steam. It was the advance group. With a cry of joy and relief, Gregorio guided the flock into the valley. As they descended, they were greeted by Plinio, Clara, Lua, Pedro, and the others, all exhausted but radiant with happiness. The reunion was emotional. Birds embraced, cried, and laughed, celebrating not only their survival, but the incredible feat they had accomplished together. Gregorio approached Plinio, his eyes shining with pride. "You did this, young friend. You guided them, united them, and saved us all." Plinio, moved, replied, "No, Gregorio, we did this, each one of us. You taught us that true strength comes from unity, from mutual care. It was that lesson that brought us here." Clara, still catching her breath from the effort, added, "We learned that each of us has something valuable to offer, that our differences make us stronger when we work together." Lua, ever the optimist, exclaimed, "And look at this amazing place we've found, a safe refuge for all of us." Pedro, who had been watching the scene with tears in his eyes, finally spoke. My father always talked about this valley, but I never truly believed it existed. Now, not only have we found it, but we share it with our whole family." Gregorio looked around at the lush valley and the gathered birds. Not just a flock anymore, but a united community. "You have done more than find refuge," he said. "You have created a home." As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the flock gathered by the edge of the lake. There was a sense of triumph in the air, but also deep gratitude and connection. They had faced the impossible and emerged not just as survivors, but transformed. In the days that followed the flock's arrival in the secret valley, a new routine began to take shape. The refuge that Pedro remembered from his father's stories proved to be more than just a temporary shelter. It became a true home for all the birds. Plinio, now respected as a natural leader, worked alongside Gregorio to organize the flock. Together, they established nesting areas, food collection points, and watch shifts to ensure everyone's safety. Clara, with her new perspective on leadership and teamwork, took on the responsibility of training the young birds in the flock. She taught them not only flying and survival skills, but also the lessons of cooperation and compassion that she had learned during the journey. Lua, with her cheerful spirit, became a kind of minister of culture for the valley. She organized storytelling nights where the birds shared their experiences and legends, keeping the memory of their origins alive and strengthening the bonds of the community. Pedro, for his part, found his place as an explorer and guardian of the valley. His knowledge of the area, combined with his newfound courage, made him a valuable protector of the flock's new home. One afternoon, as the sun set over the valley, Gregorio called everyone for a meeting by the lake's edge. When the birds gathered, the old goose looked at each of them with affection and pride. "My friends," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "look at what we have accomplished together. This vale is not just a winter refuge. It is a testament to the power of unity, compassion, and courage." He paused, looking especially at Plinio, Clara, Lua, and Pedro. "You four embarked on this journey as individuals, each with your own insecurities and limitations, but you returned as leaders, as heroes." Plinio stepped forward, humble yet confident. "We learned that true strength doesn't come from being the fastest or the strongest, but from how we care for one another and work together." Clara nodded, adding, "And that the differences we thought would divide us are actually what make us stronger as a community." Lua, with her infectious smile, said, "We discovered that each of us has a special gift to offer, and when we share those gifts, we can overcome any obstacle." Pedro, looking around at the vale that once existed only in stories, concluded, "And we learned that home is not a place, but the birds we choose to fly with." Gregorio, with tears in his eyes, spread his wings in an encompassing gesture. "This vale is more than a refuge. It is a new beginning for all of us. Here, we will continue to grow, learn, and care for one another." The birds applauded and celebrated, their voices rising in a song of joy and gratitude. As night fell over the vale, there was a shared feeling among all. They had found not just a safe place to spend the winter, but a true home where they could thrive together, facing any challenge the future might bring. Good night, my dear ones. Rest well, and remember that tomorrow we'll have more stories to share.